I'm going to tell you the story about Elon Musk and what I learned from him on what the Straight A Guide program is all about and why it makes sense. So the biography of Elon Musk tells us about a guy that just had the mindset of an entrepreneur. He really wanted to build something. And it was a long time ago when I read this book. I actually listened to the audio version while I was running. But it inspired me so much because I really believed it related to people in jail and prison. So he's from South Africa, and he came to the United States eventually by way of Canada because he wanted to go to school here. And while he was in school, one thing that he wanted to do was to become successful. And the way that he thought he could become successful was by learning from educated people. So he started writing letters to business leaders and just basically telling them, hey, I think you're really an interesting guy and I admire what you've built and I'd love an opportunity to interview you. So he started sending these letters out, just asking for an opportunity to interview people. But he wasn't just reaching out to local business people. He reached out to CEOs of publicly traded companies, some of the world's biggest companies. And he was living in Canada at the time. And he reached out to the CEO of a bank called the Bank of Nova Scotia. And the guy, it's kind of tough to get on the calendar of a CEO of a big bank like this, especially when you're just a guy who's Elon Musk, just an immigrant who's a freshman in college. But the guy invited Elon Musk to come to lunch. And during the lunch break, Elon's questions of the guy were so profound that the chairman said, you know, you've really got a good mind, and I admire what you're doing. And when you're in the summer break, if you'd like, why don't you come and intern with our company? And so that answer really opened an opportunity. And that's something that every person in prison can do. In fact, that's how I bought my first piece of real estate. I was in prison. I was about 3 years from getting out. It was during the recession, and I started writing letters to CEOs of businesses. And I said, hey, I'm in jail, I'm in prison, but I'm going to get out, and I want to be successful, and I would love an opportunity to work for you and just learn from you, and I will work for free if you allow me. Just let me learn from you. Send enough of those letters out, somebody writes you back. And so then you start nurturing a relationship with them. That's the same thing that Elon Musk did. Okay? And he got this letter from the bank, and then he went to intern for the bank. And when he went to intern for the bank, I'm going to talk about high finance now, so it might be a little bit complicated. I'm going to try and make it really simple. But while he was interning for the bank, the CEO said, okay, here's your job. I want you to go down to the basement and look for all of our records and find out, I want you to learn as much as you can about sovereign debt. Sovereign debt is a problem for a bank if the lender defaults. What a sovereign is it's an independent nation. And sometimes banks lend money to different countries. So that's a sovereign debt. If I'm a bank and I lend money to another country and the country doesn't pay me back, there's really not a lot that the bank can do because it's sovereign. It's its own country. They can't go repossess the country. So Elon Musk went and learned about sovereign debt, and from what he learned, he saw an opportunity. And that opportunity was that the United States of America guaranteed debt for some of these other countries. Long story short, without getting too much into the weeds here of what bonds are and debt is, he saw an opportunity, and when he presented it to the chairman of the bank, he looked at this as an enormous finance opportunity, and it was that conversation that led Elon Musk to start the company, which is now called PayPal. And they eventually sold PayPal for multi-billions of dollars, and he went on to launch a number of other businesses, and he became one of the wealthiest men in the world in a relatively short period of time. But all of it began with exactly what we're talking about right now. First, you have to see not yourself as a guy that's sitting in a jail cell. You have to see yourself not as a guy that's facing a sentence. You got to see yourself as what you can become. And Elon Musk, even though he was an immigrant and he didn't have any money and he didn't even have a place to live, he knew that someday he was going to be successful. And so then he started to put goals in place. I have to meet people. So he's reverse engineering, and he starts writing to people. And that led to a relationship. And that relationship led to an interview and a job opportunity. And that job opportunity led him to be able to start a company that, of course, became phenomenally successful and then led to a lot of other companies that he owns and controls. I am not Elon Musk. I was a jail person in prison for 25 years, or I think 23 years at the time. And I started writing letters and connecting and building relationships with business people, and that opened opportunities for me, and it's what made all the difference in the world. And so I want you guys to be thinking today not about what you're going to have for lunch today, or not about whether you're going to get a certificate for completing a class. What I'd love is if you guys were thinking about, what can I do with the time that I have to build a more successful venture? And use and act on it. Create your own pathway of reverse engineering. What do you have to do to advance the ball? And that's my story of Elon Musk. And so now I'm going to pause and be quiet for a couple of minutes and see if somebody wants to come up, because we only have 15 minutes left.